Thank you. We are in session number 4 of the effort to investigate, hear, learn, and eventually write and implement an equity plan for St. Louis County. Tonight's topic is equity in housing and housing-related issues.
To that end, two things we need to state for the record. One, there are many people who wanted to submit information tonight, and they may be submitting that information through the equity plan at St. Louis County, mo.gov. We are taking submissions throughout these meetings to that email address. But tonight is about public input and input from stakeholders in housing and housing equity. So we're going to be starting tonight with Barbara Harris. Please come on up, introduce yourself. And I believe you have a PowerPoint presentation you want to share. So
yes, thank you so much.
Please take the floor.
If you can formally introduce yourself and your organization, that would be very helpful.
I will
Thank
do
you.
that. My name is Barbara Harris, and I'm the co-chair of the Racial Justice Committee of Women's Voices Raised for Social Justice. I'm here with Liz Sanhas, and we are representing the committee's Affordable Housing Task Force. And we appreciate the chance to share our concerns and ideas with the panel this evening. Women's Voices is a volunteer-driven grassroots organization with more than 500 members and over 1,700 supporters who live in St. Louis City and throughout St. Louis County. We are an education and advocacy organization, and tonight we are here to advocate for equity and inclusion in housing throughout St. Louis County. There is a landscape of inequity in housing throughout St. Louis County. Women's Voices is particularly focused on communities of opportunity. That is, those municipalities where residents have easy access to good schools, healthcare, parks and recreation, shopping opportunities, and transportation. Many of these communities are found in the central corridor of St. Louis County, where many of our members live. The Center for Civic Research and Innovation, an initiative of the St. Louis Community Foundation, has provided us with some data about affordable housing in the Central Corridor. According to their research, approximately 206,000 people reside in the 22 municipalities located in the Central Corridor of St. Louis County. These municipalities are all majority white. Only 4 municipalities, Maplewood, Olivet, Rock Hill, and University City, have Black populations greater than 20%. Residents of the Central Corridor are highly educated. In all but 1 municipality, Maplewood, more than half of the residents have a bachelor's degree or higher. An overwhelming majority of residents in the Central Corridor are white-collar workers employed in management, and business, and professional services. Just 1/3 of the municipalities in the Central Corridor have more than 10% of their residents employed in service positions. This is a strong indicator that service industry employees are priced out of the area. It is clear from this data that we have an enormous affordable housing gap in St. Louis County. Members of Women's Voices believe that people, if they choose, should be able to live close to where they work. But workers that have recently been deemed essential to keeping our communities healthy and safe, those who work in our grocery stores, restaurants, government offices, and in our hospitals, nursing homes, and schools, have been priced out of homes and apartments in the Central Corridor of St. Louis County, where many of them work. For example, the salary of nursing assistants who work in a rehabilitation center in Kirkwood is $12.81 per hour. The average monthly rent for an apartment in Kirkwood is $1,190. The average price of a home in Kirkwood is $401,200. Average rents in Kirkwood are 58% of a nursing assistant's average monthly wage. In Clayton, the salary of teacher's aides is $25,000 a year. The average monthly rent in Clayton is $2,104. And the average price of a home is $762,337,000. Average rents in Clayton are 101% of a teacher aide's monthly wage. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Development, individuals and families should spend no more than 30% of their income on housing. Spending more makes them housing cost burdened. According to statistics from Empower Missouri, a statewide nonprofit, nonpartisan health and housing advocacy group, the average minimum wage in Missouri can afford rents of approximately $550 per month. There is a critical shortage of housing available for these residents, and they are forced to compete for places to live. It doesn't have to be this way. We have created this system of inequity and exclusion where decisions are made and laws have been passed and opportunities have been ignored for decades. Members of Women's Voices suggest the following ideas be thoughtfully considered by those who are drafting the county's plan for equity in housing. First, acknowledge that St. Louis County and its municipalities continue to perpetuate the segregation of many of its white neighborhoods by prohibiting construction of anything but single-family residential homes. The result of these biased policies is a total absence of duplexes, townhouses, or apartments affordable to the many people who keep our communities running, including educational support staff, firefighters, nurses' aides, medical technologists, EMTs, hotel and restaurant workers, and others who serve their communities but cannot afford to live in them. Second, support the St. Louis County Housing Authority by advocating for additional housing choice vouchers and working to educate landlords about the advantages of accepting these vouchers. This would allow those with vouchers to obtain housing in the private rental market. Third, explore and implement strategies that would require builders who seek economic incentives or tax abatements for new housing developments to set aside a percentage of units for low-income families. This strategy was adopted in Kansas City in January 2021. Fourth, work to develop a healthy, robust, affordable housing trust fund in St. Louis County. Explore the possibility of a county-wide 2% tax on all property sales, both residential and commercial, that total over $1 million. Fifth, find ways to encourage public-private partnerships that will combine public housing with market rate housing. And finally, perhaps the most challenging work will be to dismantle the not in my backyard or NIMBY culture. Until we all recognize that we depend on each other and that affordable housing is a human right, we will continue to experience the persistent social problems that interfere with our region's growth and success. As Richard Rothstein wrote in his award-winning book, The Color of Law, we have created a caste system in this country with African Americans kept exploited and geographically separate by racial explicit government policies. Although most of these policies are now off the books, they have never been remedied, and their effects endure. So thank you for the opportunity to speak at this meeting. Members of Women's Voices are eager to work with all those who want to build equity in housing in St. Louis County.
Thank you very much. Question?
Yeah, may I inquire real quick before you step down, or do you want to speak first before?
No, I'm not going to.
Okay. No. So you mentioned the service industry employees priced out of the area in particular. Who are the best partners in the who are advocating and representing folks in the service industry besides, let's say SEIU, who might assist in looking at this as a unique partnership from their perspective? Are there others who you've thought to engage with on this?
I don't know.
I'm wondering if the unions of educators, if there's unions that representative of the variety of educational support other than just teachers.
Yeah.
And of course, beginning teachers don't have salaries either.
Right.
We didn't include that data, but they would represent that. Nursing, if there's a nurses union, they would also, or any nursing organization would support nurses and nurses' aides, med techs, and other ancillary healthcare workers who are also priced out of most of the markets. I think those are two we've considered.
Are you familiar with the existence of current coalitions that are looking sort of for collective impact on this? No.
We would be very interested in that. If
Okay.
you are working with groups, we'd love to be part of that. at this point, we haven't approached any others. Our Affordable Housing Coalition task force is only about 3 months old now.
Okay.
So we're just beginning to develop our partnerships in the community. But
Okay.
if there are connections you feel like would be helpful for us to make, we'd love to.
I'm recalling a project that was done from a number of groups that I think was researched out of United Way in the early aughts called The Long Journey to Work.
Ah.
I think Women's Voices might have been a part of that in those days. And one of the issues was, for instance, when West County Mall was being built, certainly with the TIFs that existed for the project back then, there were a lot of jobs that entry-level workers who lived in the city would be ideal for and provide opportunity for, that would then impact some of those broader issues like housing and economic, sustainability. But they couldn't get to those jobs because without any reasonable rail and a bus trip that was a minimum of an hour and a half, it was not viable. Do you know if there are sort of conversations going on that connect then the housing issue to access to jobs that might, as you say, it would be nice if they were in the neighborhood, but on the off chance they're not, is there a conversation going on now in the communities that you're talking to about facilitating the current long journey to work?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
That's
They
right.
say we've started about,
Okay.
done 2 efforts, one in Webster and one in Kirk,
Okay.
regarding the housing zoning laws there. So we really have not yet branched out. Broader conversation of a
Okay.
countywide
Yeah.
initiative, but that's really what we're planning.
And when you started with Kirkwoods and Webster, did you get a NIMBY response initially, or are you finding that there's
quite a variety of responses. I would say there was somewhat of a NIMBY response in Webster, but there was also a very strong group of people who were very much in favor of expanding the opportunities for duplexes to be developed in Webster,
okay?
as well as there's a strong group in Kirkwood who are looking at developing a single family home into multi-family units in Kirkwood on Commerce Avenue. So we are seeing that there are voices supporting this effort in individual municipalities, but we haven't taken on the county as a whole yet.
Okay. Thank you.
And can we have a copy of the text that you read earlier?
Yes, absolutely. I can email you a
Yeah.
copy.
Great.
And the
To do
PowerPoint.
that.
All right. All right.
And a
Thank-
copy of the slides as well. If you'd
Yes,
like.
please. Yes, please.
Certainly,
All
glad
right.
to do that.
Thank you very much.
Mhm,
Thank you.
All right, next, Starla Young, the customer service manager for St. Louis County 311. She submitted a statement, which I believe she had some health issues, but I'm going to read the statement. Or Starla, would you like to read the statement yourself? Okay, I read it. Okay. So here's the statement. St. Louis County 311, Starla Young, customer service manager. The St. Louis County offers a resource available to all St. Louis County residents, 311. The 311 Support Center was established in June of 2018. Our mission to deliver first contact resolution and to exceed your expectations with the highest level of citizen support. Going above and beyond with each contact is the norm, not the exception. The next time you need something done on your street or in your neighborhood, or have a general question, dial 311 from your mobile phone or 314-615-5000 from a landline. We're committed to answering questions and providing timely information quickly and professionally. And thank you. That was a good statement from our 311 manager. She has a medical issue and can't speak right now, but we
It's
would like
very
to-
limited. It's not, I can speak, but it's not going to be as loud or as clear. So
Oh, take care of yourself. But thank
yes,
you.
but
They
some
do a
questions-
hard-working, excellent job.
Thank you very much.
All right, next we're going to hear from Shannon Kagi. Shannon, can you hear us?
Hi, I can hear you now. I couldn't hear before. So if you were speaking to me before, I didn't hear you. But
Oh,
good evening.
well, you're up now. So please, you have the floor, 5 minutes to share anything on equity in building and housing.
Thank you. I appreciate being here tonight. I don't have any prepared remarks. I'm a little late notice in learning about the hearing, but wanted to make it here to hear what folks have to say. It's wonderful that the county is working on an equity plan. I think that's the right thing to do. I think housing is a place where we have a lot of room to grow with equity. So as the executive director at the Housing Authority, I'm encouraged to hear that there's things that people in the community think that we can do. And I do have plans at the Housing Authority to make the best use of our resources and look at what we're doing through an equity lens. The position of executive director of the Housing Authority is also part of the Housing Resources Commission, which oversees the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So I was pleased to hear also that there's advocacy for more funding in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The work of that group was grounded in the principles of equity and moving forward with that. So I support both of those things and very happy to be in the role that I'm in and eager to work with people in the community to promote affordable housing.
If I may, Ms. Koenig, what do you see as your greatest challenges from where you sit in that regard right now?
So the biggest program that we administer at the Housing Authority, and the Housing Authority is the direct administration of housing benefits in the county. But we administer the Housing Choice Voucher Program. We serve about 7,000 families, and our families do not have a lot of choices about where they live, and the program is set up for them to have choices, but there's too many opportunities for people to be turned away. So I think on the horizon for me, I'd like to look at how we increase landlord participation, like we just heard from Women's Voices, appealing to people's social desires as opposed to financial reasons for being a landlord, but exploring other ways that the Housing Authority can support landlords. I think we need to build up our programming to make it more attractive for landlords to participate. So that's like I said, that is our biggest program. But of course, we also run public housing throughout the county. We have about 700 public housing units. It's difficult to maintain. It's a highly desired asset. There's not that much of it. And HUD is moving away from public housing and growing the voucher program. So that's going to be a challenge also. And the last option or the last program that the Housing Authority runs is real estate development through low-income housing tax credits. And those, in any new developments that the Housing Authority undertakes is going to require partnerships in the community. So when you were talking with your last guest, who I had the pleasure of speaking with yesterday, I do think that there's support for workforce housing out there. I loved what they talked about in terms of people who work on our community can't afford to live in our communities. So I think that individual campaigns on behalf of different groups of workers are going to be successful. Individual campaigns that are local in someone's community where the people who live there are asking for something, because the way that the low-income housing tax credit program is right now, we're not really breaking into areas of opportunity. And I think that is going to bring equity in housing. Folks need to be able to live in nice neighborhoods with access to all the things that any person would want.
Is that, this is maybe a naive question, is that really in the end about political power? Or is there another barrier beyond the financial piece?
Do you mean, I don't know if I understand your question.
Well, in other words, it's interesting because if there's in other words, I can see a community like Clayton, which has been doing an awful lot of building lately, but in the apartment context and even in rental context, it's unaffordable housing for most people, right? It's built for a a highly professionalized corporate kind of community. Had there been an effort to try and set aside some of those apartments, for a different kind of program, would that have taken more political power in order to get through, to the developers and to the to the city council? Or would it have been something else that might have been more successful in your experience?
And I have been part of conversations at the county about inclusionary zoning, that came up in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Task Force. And I guess I would characterize it as political will.
Okay.
Because it is a battle. So, when I talked to Women's Voices yesterday, I encouraged them to keep talking because they have a voice also. And there will be a voice that says, no, we don't want this, but the voice that says, yes, we do, has power also. And yeah, that plays out in the political arena. And because you're dealing with local laws, it does end up political. Elected officials can be on your side. You could be an elected official and help make a difference. So yes, it does play out there, and it's not always, I don't know that a developer is always the reason why something fails necessarily. And, I do think it has a lot to do with the community itself.
Okay. And one last question, if I may. What do you see as the most successful of the programs now that are building opportunity through an equity lens? Is there one that, stands out?
I think my perspective is that we really have a long way to go in terms of equity. When I was working at the county in the Office of Community Development, I was looking at trying to make sure we allocated monies to areas in the county using a racial equity lens. It's something that our muscles not really built on that yet, and we need to learn to flex that. And I hope that the equity policy that you all are writing begins to instill that in the way that people who work for the county look at the work that they do. Fortunately, I do believe in the future of the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which is the direction that HUD is going, because in an ideal world, that program works. Someone has a voucher, they get to choose where they live, and it can be anywhere they want. That's and it covers so that they don't pay that more than their 30% of their income. It is a solution. So I am very focused on, okay, why isn't it working as best as it could right now? What can we do? And I would say, one of the things that we learned from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund work was that rental assistance or a voucher or something like that is a true unmet need in the community. So many more people could qualify and receive rental assistance or a voucher than do. So I believe it's a program that works. It's underfunded, and we need to work on appropriately expanding it for people.
Thank you. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course.
And I will say something for record. Shannon's always been very open to meet and has not shied away from helping out to any task. So thank you for that too.
Thank you, Kenny.
All right. Next, Gerald Smith. Mr. Smith, are you there?
I am.
Okay, please. You have 5 minutes to talk about equity in housing, and you have the floor, sir. You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Kenny. Thank you all for inviting me out. I am the recorder of the deed for St. Louis County. I've been over 7 years. And in terms of, if we're having the equity question, one of the topics that Theda and I were talking about was property fraud and how it affects home ownership and its effect on home ownership as it relates to what our office does. So the role of the recorder's office is to record and house documents that affect property in St. Louis County. In addition to that, we issue marriage licenses, and we make an effort to provide that information readily to customers. And again, getting back to the property fraud conversation, one of the tools that we work to make sure while we're trying to maintain the integrity of the record, keeping that foremost, finding ways that we can communicate information to homeowners to help ensure that they have information necessary to react to improper behavior as it relates to the recording of documents that may be done fraudulently. One of those tools is called Property Fraud Alert. Thanks, Peter, for showing that. And Property Fraud Alert is an application. It's a free application that's housed by our land recording service vendor, essentially. And it's geared towards just keeping an eye, a watchful eye on the recorded record. And customers sign up for it at no cost and receive information from the application related to documents that may be recorded for a particular watch name. I'll give you a particular instance. My grandfather is John Smith. His name was John Smith. And so I would get property fraud alerts quite a bit. And essentially, you know, when customers get those fraud alerts, they can reach out to the recorder's office and contact us to get information related to the particular alert that they received. The reason property fraud has persisted in such a way that it has is such though that the FBI considers it a significant, increasingly significant crime, is a lot of times homeowners aren't aware of these types of documents or documents that may have been recorded that, in essence, purport to make someone else the owner of a particular property, but doing so fraudulently. So awareness is the key that we found that gives homeowners the opportunity to address those issues related to the recording of particular documents in their estate. So again, that's our role in the it's part of our role in the scheme of things. On the bigger picture, I work with other organizations throughout the state and the nation to get the standardized processes and ensure that, again, the integrity of the record is foremost, and that we keep processes and procedures in place that, again, will benefit the not just the homeowner public, but the public at large, as it relates to recording documents and marriage licenses and things of that nature. I can share my email address. I forgot to include that in the on the slide. For more information or to contact me, just reach out to the county's website, and under government, you'll see revenue, select recorder of deeds, or just shoot me an email at gsmith@stlouiscountymo.gov. Again, thanks for your time, and great to talk with you.
Mr. Smith, quick question, if I may.
Sure.
Do you see the Black, Indigenous, and people of color community as being greater targets of property fraud? And is that anecdotal, or do you keep data that you can share that might, you know, address the equity piece uniquely?
Yeah, no, I don't have the data on that as it relates to St. Louis County, but typically those kinds of crimes affect homeowners that have the ability to sometimes not reside at a particular location for extended periods of time. Vacationers, you know, folks that have a second home away, things of that nature. And then there are instances where in some urban communities, I've literally heard of examples where someone owned a brownstone, and right next door, she owned the entire brownstone, and then right next door, someone was changing the locks on her door, and come to find out the deed to the property he recorded the deed to the property indicating that he was the owner, not knowing that she was the actual owner of the property. So it does happen in urban communities. I don't have the data on it, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there, another question, is there danger around transfer of title of property from, like, if someone's grandfather or grandparents passed away? Is that where fraud or people can kind of attack a homeowner's property?
Yeah, and that's a great, thanks, Ken. That's a great segue into another conversation. But yes, that heirs properties are subject to property fraud, essentially because at some point throughout the home ownership, that conversation isn't had. And so you don't have proper conveyance of title upon death. And in a lot of cases, it requires probate and a fraudulent, somebody doing, conducting fraudulent business might tend to use that advantage or use that as an advantage to, again, prey on some unsuspecting homeowners.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Go ahead, call her.
Maria, do you want to come up and introduce yourself and share?
Good evening. My name is Maria Yaksich, and I'm a realtor in the area. And I'm here just to appeal to the county for a better, much more equity laws that will benefit our families. Because as a realtor, I'm really struggling to find affordable housing for people that are looking for under 180,000. I mean, there is something that a housing that is adequate, where it could be livable, is very difficult. And we know that we're going to have an influx of families that are coming from Afghanistan. And I think we need to start considering how we can make sure that our city takes in all the need for housing that is going to be allocating multi-family buildings that allow families that have more than 2 children. Most of us immigrants do not have 1 or 2 children. And it is very difficult to find housing. I have some people that are from Congo that have been in my list, and we're trying to find housing for them. And they're being with me over 2 years because I cannot find them a home that is going to provide them with a residence that it meets their needs, considering the fact that they have more than 2 children. Some of them have 4, some of them might have 5. And if they're going to be moving to another different location, they need to have the space available. And furthermore, what as an immigrant myself, what I have a hard time understanding is why the residents or the living facilities that provide good education is only allowed for those people that have the income. People that do not have the income are subject to an educational system that will not provide them with an opportunity to grow and contribute to society. So if we want to, I see it as a problem in the crime that exists. If we are to change the crime that exists in our city, we have to start providing housing that is attached with an educational system that is of high quality. Right now, a child that is in a low-income neighborhood will not be receiving the educational quality of education that a Kirkwood child will receive. And it should not be. This is where our biggest problem that I see with equity for our families. And if we are going to become a better city and a city that can pull in more investment from people, we have to address this issue, because I really think crime is related to this issue. Thank you.
Could I ask quickly, is the larger percentage of your client base immigrant families?
Yes.
Okay. And do you find within the system relative to paperwork and filings and things like that, that there are barriers that might be removed to make your job easier in light of people who might have English learner,
Especially around language.
yeah, especially around language and understanding of, some of the contractual issues and property rights issues there.
Yes, because right now, like the St. Louis Realtor Association does not have the documents or the contracts in any other language than English. And when I had offered to translate them, because I am not a lawyer, it cannot be done. So it is something that I feel very difficult. So I try to make sure that I am very well versed in the contracts and being able to translate them. But I have to say, when I started it, I definitely made a mistake. And it cost me, because I knew my responsibility. It cost me $6,000 because that was my first contract that I had done for a condo. And the condo fees was not covering the insurance, the roof cost. And then later on, when I had already got my client to be able to get this condo, the association came and said, oh, by the way, you owe this much money. And I wasn't versed enough at that time to understand these components, and it was my mistake, but so I took responsibility of it. And even though I was told by my broker that I would be okay because they had signed this document, I felt responsibility to pay that portion of that that they were hit with, because when they bought the condo, they weren't aware of. And since it doesn't come in another language, they were really going by my knowledge, and my knowledge was not 100% there. Now, of course, that cannot happen again, because guess what? Now I ask more questions and I investigate. But at that time, when you're new, you think you understood what it meant, but I didn't understand. So it cost me. But at the same time, it is something that we need to have in different languages. Furthermore, I kind of feel that the FHA program does not serve our families that have low income, because if they don't qualify for another loan, and FHA is tag a PMI, that is for the life of the loan. I mean, these
The
are
life of the loan.
yes, for the life of the
Yeah.
loan.
Well, that's a structural issue. There's no question about that.
And it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
No, because I mean, they're already having trouble meeting the needs of paying it because of their low income.
Yeah.
And then you're attaching this FPMI for the length of the loan. And to me, that is just not right.
Yeah. Hear you.
Do you find that some immigrant families feel intimidated or deauthorized to even speak up and ask questions, and that lack of asking questions leads to miscommunication, misunderstanding, and even economic loss?
Definitely. I currently am trying to sell a property that has an easement. There's 4 different properties that share the driveway. But when they bought the house, these are immigrants, when they bought the house, they didn't know that this was the case. Not only that, when I look at the appraisal that was done by the lending company, it does not state that there was this issue on the appraisal. So yes, it's something, things that happen. And when we talk about fraud, to me, that was a fraudulent transaction. But it happened, and now trying to unload that property where there's 4 different properties that are sharing the same driveway, it's complex.
I don't have any more questions, Maria. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Maria and I share responsibilities as board members of the Hispanic Leaders Group of Greater St.
Very
Louis.
good.
It's
Very
nice
good.
to see you here.
Mr. Juan.
Yeah, do you want to?
All right, Juan, are you there? Let's get Juan. Narez, Juan,
There he is.
there you are. All right, you have the floor to speak on anything with equity and housing.
Yes. Hi. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
Of course.
Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Juan Narvaez. I work at St. Francis Community Services in the nonprofit legal aid agency known as Catholic Legal Assistance Ministry, or CLAM for short. I'm a bilingual legal assistant and organizer of the Immigrant Housing Justice Project. A little bit about my background. I'm an immigrant myself, just like Maria, Yaxi Kai Maria. I'm from Nicaragua. I crossed the border when I was about 8 months old.
Oh, okay.
So the work that I do is very near and dear, although challenging, and I'll try to explain why. The Immigrant Housing Justice Project is an eviction prevention program. The program is designed to assist the immigrant community in the St. Louis region to provide legal services and representation combined with financial assistance and various levels of mediation and or negotiation between tenant and landlord in order to avert eviction. Some quick numbers so far for some of our clients specific to St. Louis County. The total sum of financial assistance that we have distributed to St. Louis County clients is $45,700. And the average months of our clients that are behind on rent in the county is 2 months. The max that we have seen is 12 months. The average amount of our rental assistance that we have distributed is $2,500. So getting into the challenges and patterns of cases that we've been experiencing is that most of our cases that we take on are handled outside of the courtroom. A lot of the immigrant community, especially undocumented folks, may have an apprehension to legal aid or getting an attorney involved. There's an aversion to exercising one's rights and dealing with any form of authority that can be an issue because there's a fear and distrust of authority and the legal process. And I don't think that's unique to just the immigrant community when you're talking about inequity for Black and Brown communities alike. You see this theme of seeking out the pathway of least resistance, and this may come out of the need not to cause greater harm to their family, but by not attracting unwanted attention to themselves and just avoiding taking risks generally. So we really try to intervene before an eviction would occur. But working with a tenant is one side of the challenge. You also have the property owners and the property management, which is difficult. Many landlords are understanding of the situation and are willing to work with tenants. However, there are many property owners that are more aggressive and less sympathetic to the hardships experienced by tenants. I also come across a lot of landlords who are immigrants themselves. I would say about 75% of the landlords that I engage with are immigrants. And so sometimes there's a double language barrier with neither not able to speak with the other and neither speak English. I want to mention informal evictions, or also known as legal evictions or legal lockouts or self evictions. Those are a major concern. Basically, informal evictions are forced displacement from housing and can be due to receiving threats or buyouts or changing locks, utility shutoffs, removing doors from houses, etc. Some informal types of evictions can also be very onerous because the tenant often does not perceive it as an eviction process. They can occur after having a dispute or a conflict with the landlord, or the apartment is uninhabitable, and or simply just falling behind on rent. The tenant will decide to self-evict. Another hurdle is that eviction is a civil court process. And in an eviction court, people do not have right to legal counsel. Part of what our program is set to do is to provide legal representation in a culturally sensitive and language accessible manner, because it is true most tenants across race and other demographics are not represented at nearly the same rate that landlords have legal representation, and thus are less likely to have a favorable outcome in court. First off, when it comes to addressing inequities, I'm by no means an expert on social inequities that have structurally and systematically shut out people from achieving equity and success. With that, we come here with the basic truth that it is Black and Brown communities that have historically and will perpetually bear the brunt of the largest social economic injustices of our time. And when it comes to housing and evictions, it's especially so for single Black and Brown mothers with children. I think that needs to be a foundation of every aspect of policymaking and building equity in housing or having access to housing. One thought that occurs is having access to reliable data, which and that could look like building a comprehensive regional eviction tracking database, which would be immensely helpful with understanding where evictions occur, tracking evictions over time, and to identify how and where to invest resources. Right now, there is very telling data that is being collected by the St. Louis County Rental Assistance Program, which is by far the best rental assistance program in the region compared to the city and also the state of Missouri. There's a wealth of data in the dashboard system that's available online that is capturing almost real-time info and maps that shows where most of the applications and funds are going. Another thought is housing availability and affordability, and this was mentioned by others as well. Eviction and pertaining to evictions specifically, they leave a stain on a renter's history, thus impacting a family's ability to find quality housing later. Sealing eviction records for those that did get evicted, especially during the pandemic, in order to protect a tenant's prospective housing would be really helpful. And it's not just accessing the emergency rental assistance fund, it's generally having access to information and resources, assistance with navigating systems. It's the language barrier that really bars a lot of immigrants from a lot of services. And so that's all I have. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much, Juan. Question on the eviction tracking database and rental assistance and the dashboard that you mentioned in terms of the data that's already being collected. Excuse me. Is there like a state of the region report every year that shouts out this information so that people have it thrust in front of them because they're not otherwise going to go looking for it?
So with the St. Louis, that's public information that's available now, and I think that just pertains to the rental assistance application monies that's being doled out. But as far as a regional report, I think the only one that really comes to mind is a report that the St. Louis Metropolitan Equal Housing and Opportunity Council, or EHOC, recently published. They published an eviction state of eviction kind of housing report just this year actually, and so that's the closest thing. That's really the closest thing that comes to mind right now. That's really current. So.
Okay. And when you talk about sealing eviction records, which I really like that idea, what do you say to landlords who want some other criteria if they're not going to know somebody's history with another landlord? And is there a risk that a past landlord will say to a potential future landlord, even if that record is sealed, they'll have a behind, the door conversation to say, by the way, these people are, a victim, blah, blah, blah. How can you prevent that kind of damage to reputation, but also provide landlords who want to know that somebody's, as stable as they can be for the purposes of saying, okay, I'm going to support you on this app?
Sure. It goes to the search for quality, affordable housing. I mean, how can you make that as accessible as possible? And Shannon Koenig, and she was talking. I mean, she's probably more familiar on this subject than I am, but I mean, I guess that goes into really the application process and what that looks like, and what landlords are allowed to ask, and whether a landlord reference was given. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that's a perfect answer, but I guess
that's okay.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a perfect answer. And if I may, one last, who are the folks who've been the greatest partners for the people who seek assistance from your office in terms of broader social service delivery, in the context of It Takes a Village approach to support people?
Sure. So at St. Francis Community Services, we're we partner frequently. I mentioned I mentioned St. Louis Metropolitan Equal Housing and Opportunity Council. We also have like in-house, we have case management, bilingual case management and therapy, and which goes along with kind of the array of services that we offer, which we're mostly known for our immigration law services. So the program that I work on is just barely over a year old. So,
Okay.
but we frequently partner with other legal aid agencies like Legal Services Eastern Missouri, our City Defenders, and we have weekly phone calls where we're just trading information, updates on rental assistance, and where we talk with city and county officials as well. So, which have been great partners, as great as they can be in trying times. But other than that, I mean, there is just a general network of immigrant service providers network where we provide resources and give information and are able to refer people for various services.
Thank you.
And one more question. I wanted to understand something. With these soft evictions and with the language barrier, it is possible then that someone could be being evicted and not really even understand they're being evicted because of the language barrier? Do you see that? Does that happen often?
I mean, I think it's clear. It becomes clear at a certain point after a certain point that someone
Physical
just
things
doesn't want
moving,
to,
yeah.
whether it's a landlord that just doesn't communicate or is unresponsive or refuses rents. I think it becomes pretty clear after a certain point. But you know, people don't really, because landlord-tenant relationships can be so personal sometimes. People don't really see, like, if, for example, if it's their cousin that owns like a house or apartment and they are renting out to their cousin, and so if it's like that or something like that, if it's then they don't see it as an eviction and they don't see it as an illegal eviction and at that as well. So it really can get really muddy because there really is no there's no clarification on the law. The law is still based on kind of these draconian landlord feudal type language.
Yeah, residency is not well defined in Missouri law.
So yeah, that's what I would say.
All right, thank you very much for that, Juan. Thank you very much. Right now, Miss Johnson, please.
Thank you for having me this evening.
Of course.
This is okay.
Yes.
I am broker owner of a real estate company here in Missouri, America Realty, as well as another one out of the state, but we'll just talk about Missouri. I have been very, very wowed, especially with the these young ladies here. That
Yes.
I can't put down their brochure, Women with Voices. But prior to my ownership and working with clients in the real estate business, I started in mortgage lending in the mid 1980s and been in a lot of key positions. And I think a lot of this puzzle has to do with the mortgage lenders as well. And I've seen a lot. I was in the industry when they failed. I started with savings and loans and saw when the savings and loan failed and subpoenaed I've seen a lot with the mob coming in and a lot of things under the table. So even though there are guidelines in the mortgage industry, there's ways around them. The redlining. I was underwriting manager with Countrywide for the Midwest region. a lot of B paper right before the fall. And even though they have new, nice, it sound good, it feels good programs, when the television goes off, we have a second meeting. And the second meeting is that the lenders don't want to go through all the red tape and do all of these nice programs to help all of these nice people. And I used to teach classes on becoming first-time home buyers. And we were so busy. And I remember even requesting this at Countrywide, that there's a flux of people coming in. They're signing all of these papers, and they do not know what they're signing. All they know is they get in this house, and they haven't flipped over the reverse side of how long you need to stay in this house before you can refi or sell it or be penalized. And I used to take my time with these applicants, and until I was threatened to lose my job from assisting so much. But that didn't stop me. I'm a faith believer and know what God has embedded in me. So with the race situation, a lot of people, you have an option to not check the box if you want to reveal your race. We were instructed, and I work for a lot of mortgage companies, to check the box once they left the room. So when people think that they don't know what race, sex, and et cetera, the applicant is, they do, and it's inputted into the system. What I'm getting at is it would be nice if somehow, and I know there's a NACA program out there as well that helps towards, I've worked with NACA as well, but unfortunately NACA.
I'm sorry, can you just clarify the acronym? I'm not.
National Association for, what's NACA?
America at the end.
All right, we'll look it up, but thanks.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. And that's a lender.
Okay.
And they work with people for like a year or two, credit-wise, low interest rates. But unfortunately, NACA does not value contract dates. And a lot of people lose their homes that way. They have large volumes, and they're not able to keep up. And for me, every person, every applicant is valuable. The other issue with the lenders overall is that when we have affordable housing and your loan amount is under a certain amount, then you also get penalized. And so you have people who can barely afford the house to start with. And then the lender states that they're going to charge you a higher interest rate for a mortgage amount below a certain amount, plus charge points. And if people are not knowledgeable of knowing how to read the closing settlement statement, or even when they receive the truth in lending disclosure, good faith, and sign quickly, you've already signed and consented to this information. It would be nice if there is a gap closed with affordable housing and lenders completely on board. Not on board at a nice meeting, and then the second meeting happens, and I've been there, which states, this is how we can get out of and reject these loans. And there is a sheet that we used to have, and they will give us information how to reject these loans. I was an underwriting manager. How to get around the redlining. That's why now as a owner and broker, I only deal with like 2 lenders that I know are bona fide and won't take advantage of my clients. So my appeal to you guys is, if we can be able to bridge that gap of the happy face when you meet a lender versus a different story is going to happen to these nice people, foreign or born in America. It happens to them all. And unfortunately, the much cushion loans out in West County or your Chesterfields and so forth get top priority unless you know the lender with your eyes closed. And that's probably what's lacking with a lot of people. The blessing part that I have is I have the financial background from the 1980s on back that I actually counsel my clients thoroughly of purchasing a home. And I do speak at some of the town hall meetings with people that this is not what they do. If you don't eat and sleep and drink mortgage lending, property selling, then you're blinded and you have to trust who's in front of you. So I hope I'm invited back.
Oh, absolutely.
I really love this forum here, and I won't take up much more of your time, but I just want to put that in your ear.
Can we ask you one question?
Sure.
I do, if I may, thank you,
Mhm.
Kenny. You mentioned teaching classes to first-time home buyers.
Sure.
If you had let's say not necessarily an ideal setting, but let's say you could have some time
Mhm.
with people as they're initially, could a few hours?
Oh,
an
yes.
essay- I mean,
Oh,
in other
yes.
words, if the county could create some sort of mechanism jointly, perhaps with some educational institutions and the St. Louis Realtors, and maybe who knows else could get into the fund,
Mhm.
that could be something that before they even step into the process.
I would love to do that. Education is the biggest key. And even when I'm working with my clients, I do credit repair into my, probably, I would say 70% of my clients, I've repaired their credit. Because people have the money. There's a lot of people who have good jobs and they have their money, the income, but the credit, they weren't taught by their parents. Unfortunately, the parents didn't know how to teach them how to have good credit.
And they weren't taught in public or school often.
Exactly. I had a challenge with my professor. In accounting, everything came out real crisp, clean in the black. And in my scenario, even in college, is I challenged my professor, what happens when dad gets laid off? This is the real world. People get laid off, hours cut. So I do go over all of that. I go over budgeting, the real stuff, not just what's printed, and prepare my clients for the biggest purchase of their life.
Well, and I suspect the next few years, given all of the instability and the employment issues and all the other housing markets as a result of the virus, the next few years are going to be a particularly acute time to do this kind of work.
Exactly. One more thing is the one lady, I believe it was the young man, mentioned that about the soft evictions. And I have not seen it. I'm very intact. I underwrite my clients as we go because I get no one declined. And the guidelines have not changed. FHA, VA, conventional, none of the guidelines have changed yet as far as foreclosures during COVID. It's, you would think they would have amended the guidelines, but they have not. So that's the last thing I wanted to say.
And for the record, NACA is the Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America.
Yeah, I told you America is at the end. Yes. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Now, I see on the screen, there's a SH. Is that committee member Shanette, or is that Ben?
No, it's Shanette.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so we can introduce Officer Shanette Hall, Vice Chair of the St. Louis County Human Relations Commission. Thanks for being with us, Shanette.
Yeah, thank you for being here tonight. And so I think that concludes it. Yeah.
We appreciate everybody's participation significantly. This was, again, a wonderfully substantive conversation. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks to Ms. Person once again for assisting on all of the admin, and Mr. Murdoch, thank you. And we look forward to October, what's the next date for the next session?
It's October 27th.
And the issue is,
Let's see, pull that one up.
I should bring up I didn't have the flyer with me. Just so we prepare ourselves. Yeah,
I'm not sure right now off the top of my
Okay.
head, but
well, we'll put
Yeah,
out the
we'll put up
notice.
it's education.
Okay, equity and education. Again, thank you so much. Can you say the address one more time?
Yes,
for
if
people?
you know of anybody whose input would be valuable to St. Louis County, they can submit a 5-minute video of what they believe building equity in housing or any of the equity subjects to the equity plan at stlouiscountymo.gov. And we will put that in the formal record as we consider writing the equity plan early next year. And we'd like to thank you all for being tonight, and everyone, have a
Be
good night.
safe. Thank you.